Hi there and welcome to Plant CEO. In today's episode, I'd like to welcome Stephanie Downs, the CEO and co-founder of Uncaged Innovations. Hey Stephanie, how are you doing?
Hey Anat, nice to see you. I'm doing great.
That's awesome, and it's great to have you on the show. I know we've been looking at trying to get you on, and I think it's a good time to speak to you, right?
It is. Yeah, we've got some good announcement coming up.
Great, so we're going to get onto that in a minute. But I think it'll be good to start with what basically inspired you to move from basically, I guess, animal advocacy into the tech world, biomaterials, and eventually start Uncaged Innovations.
Yeah, no, my journey has definitely been long and winding, but I'm really happy where it landed. So I've been an entrepreneur for 26 years now, which sounds so crazy. And my first company was an internet marketing company, which is not, digital marketing is not interesting today as far as a startup. But in 1999, nobody knew what that was. And my biggest competitor was the Yellow Pages, which is fun to look back on. And then I had that company for 14 years. But while having that company, I went vegan and became very interested in animal welfare. But I wanted to do something somehow to kind of use business skills to help animals, and ended up helping various animal welfare groups doing corporate outreach. So I would go out and meet with companies and just kind of in a very proactive way and educate them on the challenges of having animals in their supply chain, everything from working with more humane slaughter systems to my favorite was working with different fashion and automotive brands to educate them on material innovations. So kind of just fell in love through that process of this concept of being able to use innovation to create change and giving people alternatives instead of saying stop doing something. So after selling my first company, I went on to start a plant-based meat company in India and then exited out of that and then decided to get into materials. So kind of social enterprise ended up being kind of my perfect happiest place.
Yeah, and why did you pick materials out of and not stick, I guess, in food from what you were doing last year?
Yeah, so I started in food in 2015, and so when we started the plant-based meat company, and then exited out in 2019, I did contemplate, staying in the food space and starting something else in that category. But I decided two different reasons. One, I felt at the time that there were lots of companies in the alt protein space. By 2019, it was quite flooded with different innovations. And then also, because of the work that I'd done for animal welfare groups with outreach to corporate brands about, leather alternatives, fur alternatives, so on, I'd been watching the space since 2008. And there'd been various innovations, what we kind of think of as the first generation of innovations that had been trying to, bring innovations to market for about 10 years at that point. And I just, in talking to people in the space that I had kept in touch with, I was hearing that the current innovations weren't scaling. They were having troubles with performance, very pricey. So just decided to throw our hat in the ring and see if I could bring some scientists in and come up with an innovation.
Yeah, and specifically that innovation has been obviously plant-based leather is the market that you're in, but you're also using grains.
Yes.
So what basically sets you apart technically, I guess, and ethically?
Yeah. So, technically what sets us apart is we are the first to use grain proteins in this way. The way that our innovation works is, and why we went down this path is when we started the company, we didn't really have a particular ingredient that we were in love with. We didn't, it wasn't like we love cactus or we love mushrooms. We just started out with what makes leather. And my brilliant co-founder, Dr. Jaguar Wang, she looked into what's happening and what she realized is that when you take a hide, an animal hide is really just a giant chunk of collagen. And why that's important, what she figured out is as they take it through the tanning process, is that collagen is a protein. So when they cross-link it and treat it with the different chemicals, proteins are very long amino acid chains that can all bind together. And so she figured out a way to use plant proteins in a similar manner. So we use waste proteins, different byproducts, or things that would often, ironically, normally be fed to cattle. We can divert into our material. So we're using waste streams and byproducts. So scientifically, that's what sets us apart because we use that as our backbone and we get the proteins to cross-link. And then ethically, I guess, although I think that, any innovation, even the synthetic leathers are better for the planet than in animal leathers, but our material is also either can be plastic free or is at most 1% plastic if we put a bioplastic top coat on it. So, looking at that, obviously just not being animal leather, it's ethically better, but also our innovation is different because it's extremely low or no plastic.
Yeah, and that process, I guess, of using the waste products, etc., Do you also have to use some sort of chemicals like they do in the tanning process in your materials? And if so, what sort of process is that?
We do have to use some chemicals, but as our CTO says, that chemicals is a very vague word. For example, water is a chemical, so
Yeah, sure.
chemicals is a very broad term. So we're using what is referred to as green chemistry. So we're not using any chemicals that have any toxicity to them. And we also have no waste that comes out of it. So the things that go into the material, even the dye, like we don't use dyes. We don't have to use any type of water. Everything that goes into our material stays in our material. So it's all toxic free and very, very green chemistry.
Yeah, and when it comes to the color then, I guess, does that depend on sort of the plant grains that you're using, or how does that work?
Well, fortunately, because we're using grain byproducts, they're for the most part grains, and for example, we also use rice husks, like the waste husk that would come in the rice. All of those ingredients are very light in color. So without adding any pigments at all, our material is like a very, very light tan, like cream color. And so we fuse in mineral pigments or agricultural waste streams. So for example, we can use what's called coffee cherry, which is the shell of a coffee bean that normally goes to waste when they pull the coffee bean out. And when we fuse that into the material, it makes this really pretty brown color. And so say we use waste streams when we can, or we use mineral pigments.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so you've got a number of brands interested now, and you're working with the industry, and you've got some exciting news to share. So it'd be great to talk about that.
Yeah. So, our main markets are the fashion and the automotive industries, although we've also recently had a lot of inbound from home decor. And we get requests to do private jet interiors. We've gotten requests to do basketballs. It's just quite a few different things that come at us. But the announcement that you're referring to is we've just recently announced that we've signed a brand partnership with Jaguar. So, over the last couple of years, Jaguar's VC fund, In Motion Ventures, has invested in us twice, but we've now signed a partnership actually with the Jaguar brand to bring a car interior to market together. So, and we've just recently made that official announcement when I was in London, so it was wonderful. And then we're also working with all of the top fashion houses. I can't go into any details on that, but we'll actually have a really great partnership announcement on that coming out this fall. And then we're also bringing to market right now, there's actually products in the market that are available already through what we call the Collective. And the Collective is a group of 10 different boutique brands that are located in 9 different countries around the world that are each bringing product to market this year. We have one in London called Watch and Strap that is already available on their website. We have another one called Kyla Catherine that just brought the most beautiful wallet to market that you can see on our Instagram. And we'll have another one coming out soon from a brand called Stowe that's actually taking one of their signature core pieces, one of their most popular purses, and doing it in 4 different colors of our material.
That's really cool. So let's talk about Jaguar. Obviously, huge brand here also in the UK, and they went through some design changes that were popular or not popular, but definitely gave them a lot of PR, which
a lot
is
of
great.
attention. Yep.
Yeah, and I do like the new Type 00, so yeah, that's an amazing car from what it looks like. So have you agreed on the model that this Uncaged Innovations will be placed into?
We have not yet agreed on the model. Because we're just starting the first phase of a development plan. So right now our material meets all the specifications for the fashion industry as far as fashion accessories, because each different type of product, like for example, the durability of a watch band is different than the durability of a purse and different than durability of shoes and so on. So our material currently is at the specifications for the fashion items, but we're going to be evolving it over the next year and a half to the specifications for automotive. So Jaguar is putting in funding that's going to get us to that point. So we have a very good R&D path in place.
Yeah, that's great. And so it'll be really cool to hear what happens there. And I guess in terms of the big thing is scaling, right? Especially for larger pieces and also just to meet the current demands that current leather is in. So how are you solving that at the moment?
Yeah. And, we're already at full scale, which I'm really proud to say. Somebody recently asked me, what are some of your favorite memories in life? And one of them was seeing that roll come off that piece of equipment, because taking something from, something that works in a lab that's like the size of a quarter to full scale rolls is not an easy task. It seems like, from the outside that it would be, but it's enormously hard. So we're already at full scale. And what that means in our world is we're producing in roll to roll. So rolls of the material, we make them and they're 60 inches inches wide rolls. And right now we're making 200-meter long rolls because we're just doing a variety of colors. But we can do 2,000 meters, whatever. Actually, next month we're doing 4 600-meter roll runs. So we can produce in whatever length people need, really. And one of the reasons that we were able to scale so quickly is we took a couple different strategies. One, from the very beginning, I knew from having started other companies that this was a challenge that a lot of companies faced. So we brought in an advisor at the beginning that was a manufacturing expert, knew a lot of different types of manufacturing equipment lines. And so every time we'd start to get something that worked well in the lab, he would start to think about, okay, it could maybe fit on this type of equipment and stuff. And so there was, lots of iterations went on to finally, because what we're produced on is not something that would normally produce fashion material. So we were a little bit of planning, a little bit of luck that we were able to get something that could plug into an existing line, which meant we didn't have to build a factory. So because when you start doing that, that can delay for years. So, and then also now we can quickly move around the planet as things happen with tariffs or other things. It enables us to be very nimble and get to high volumes quickly.
Yeah. So where's your current partners or co-manufacturing partners?
So we have two co-manufacturing partners that are in the United States, fairly near us. And then we've already established a partnership with a company that can produce for us in Sweden. And then we're also looking for, we're setting up a couple others. We're going to be setting up an operation in Asia also.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. And I guess one of the things is when it comes to some brands who, I guess quite, especially on the luxury side, there still seems to have this affiliation of, having animal skin for some reason.
Yes.
And I think it's definitely like a mind shift that we do have to change, even perhaps using behavioral science. And, there's definitely companies that are producing a lot of leather items and they might create a bespoke one piece or two pieces or whatever, but they get loads of PR about it, but it doesn't really change things.
Yeah.
What do you think needs to happen, from your opinion, to make this transition happen faster?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. One, yes, the brand, we have had various brands out there who do like one piece and then don't continue on. But I think a lot of that is more a little bit to blame on our industry. I think that the innovations just haven't quite been there. We've heard from brands that have used innovations that had durability issues. They put them out into the market and 6 months later they started cracking. We've also had other ones they've said that they have a path to get the price down. It starts out like 3-4 times more than the animal leather, but then they're not able to scale it. And brands brands aren't going on a large volume to pay 5 times more than what they do for their leather. They just can't sustain that. So I think it's, not completely on the brands. I think some of them had very good intentions as they were leaning in and it just didn't get there. And so I think that that's something that we're going to start to see to change though. I think that the second iteration of innovations that have been coming through, or even some of the first generations, are really getting there scale wise, durability wise. So I think that that's going to happen. But then to your point too on the messaging, I think that there is, it's always interesting to me how people find leather luxurious. I actually was in a meeting once and a brand said something to me about leather is so luxury. People just, that's how consumers view it. And I held up a piece of leather that we had on the table and I said, this is dead skin treated with toxic chemicals and coated in plastic. Marketing made that luxury. So, because the consumers don't stop to think about it. Like I'll tell people, leather is embalmed skin. And they're like, wow, I've never stopped to think about that. Or I've even heard people say, especially with the younger generations, I didn't know that leather came from an animal. So, you've got some really interesting consumer perceptions out there that we cannot underestimate. And so I think it's going to be also a little bit of education. And then the other thing is I think there's some efforts going on that we're leading, working with some marketing agencies and some different groups that we've pulled together to rename this industry, because I think we have to stop referring to ourselves as an alternative and start talking about it. It's this new level of new innovation that has come to market. So I think there's a couple of different things that are going to have to happen. And another thing is, I think we learned this in the food space, is that this is not an easy task and we need to set realistic expectations for this transition. I heard a speaker recently and he made a comment that I thought was just so brilliant. And he said, if you're working on a problem that you can solve in this this lifetime, you're not working on a very hard problem.
True. Yeah, yeah.
And, so I think some of what we're doing is, we're planting the seeds and, like for us, the animal leather industry is an $85 billion industry, right? If we get 1% of that market, we'd be an $850 million company, right? So, we need to put this in perspective of how we transition this.
Yeah, and I guess the other side is not only is it just like obviously cowhide that is seen as luxury, you've also got crocodile, and what I find super frustrating is crocodile farms being made to meet with the demand. And then you also see other rare skins like shark skin, for example.
Yeah, you can buy elephant skin.
My God, yeah, it's just terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess when it comes to the farming side, especially with crocodile, I think there's farms in Australia where they're building it out.
Yeah.
Is that something that you can replicate? Like, I guess it's to do with the color and the texture, right? And the shape of the indentations. Is that something that you can explore?
Yeah, so we can do more of what I would call exotic patterns, that we can put on. Yeah. Right now, the initial market that we're targeting is the bovine leather industry, or really flat leather. And flat leather can be from cows, bovines, from goats, from, all kinds of different animals, sheep. So we're targeting currently the flat industry. The exotics are more challenging having been, again, in this space when I used to reach out to companies about alternatives. Exotics are challenging because I will be honest, there's no great alternative right now. Like because right now the only alternatives are made of plastic and they just don't have the same hand feel. I can say we do have a path to, so the name of our material is Elevate, and we do have on our R&D path to work on what we call Elevate 3D, which is going to be our exotics line, because there is a lot of need. Some companies like Chanel have banned exotics because, and also there's a very big difference with consumers around the perception of that, because it is seen more, because it's true, as those animals are really just raised for their hides. The meat is sold or eaten by the locals, but it is not, there's no crocodile meat industry, so cruelty is more acknowledged, I think, by consumers. But right now, there's nothing we have, and there's nothing I've really seen in the market, but I think that we'll get there.
Yeah. I think we definitely have to get there, because it's, I guess the other thing is, from a marketing point of view, with your experience, is like just not making it acceptable, to have people interested in those exotic skins in the first place,
Yeah.
That's definitely something that we could also work in as an industry. You've also described, I guess, with the company, your products as being uncaged from animals and fossil fuel, which is a great name of how you created it. So how do you approach that holistically across your supply chain and innovation process, I guess, to make sure none of that is part of the process?
Yeah, well, that's very simple. I mean, everything that we do, we're always certain that it's organic and it's animal free and vegan and everything. So, but it is interesting, everything, even down to glues, that we recommend to partners. Glues can have animal based things in them. Different chemicals can be animal based. So we really had to, and it's been, my R&D team isn't vegan. So, I even had to, at the beginning, it was kind of has a little bit of an education process. That is a problem, and let's go find something different. So we had to go through some of that, but yeah, it hasn't been too bad as far as once we were aware of it, we could always find an alternative. But yeah, and then our plan also, the other thing we're doing is we're being careful about who we're sourcing from and where they're sourcing their ingredients, wanting to make sure, like, for example, we use a fabric backing on our material, and the fabric backing that we use comes from a factory that our COO, he owned 5 different finished goods factories making goods for the fashion industry, and the factories that we're using are ones he's used in the past and he's personally visited. So we know that the working conditions are good. So across the chain, it's very important to us to make sure everything we're doing is ethical.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk about the other big sector, which is footwear. So sneakers, trainers, etc., shoes. What's been the interest so far of that sector?
Yeah, tons of interest. That's a really interesting segment, especially in the athletic footwear space, because they're under, athletic or outdoor footwear, because their consumers often are more concerned about the environment, because they're out and about, they're out in the outdoors and doing things and want to take better care of our planet. So we get a lot of inbound interest from that. And also footwear makes up 50% of the leather market. So 50% of leather sold goes into footwear because it's just a higher turn. burn, right? Like we get rid of our tennis shoes. They wear out faster than maybe our purses and certainly our cars or couches. So yeah, we've had a ton of interest there, and we're just now, our first collective that I talked about in our first wave of brands that we're working with are accessories, but our second market is footwear that we're moving into now, because we're now at the specifications needed for footwear. So we're prototyping with various footwear brands, and hopefully we'll start to see some of that, I would guess, maybe by the spring of next year.
Yeah, that's really good, because there's a lot of big brands who are saying or claiming that their products are sustainable and recycled, but not entirely the whole product is. And I do feel that we also, from a fashion point of view, and also I think the big thing is when you wear shoes, especially athletic shoes, it forms people's identity to some degree when you're out and about, because you're basically selling that brand, and you're selling what that brand believes in, and how vocal are they on other topics. So it's something that I feel we need to push a lot more, because there isn't that many, I would say, huge just vegan or plant-based footwear athletic brands, right? They're kind of normally rolled into bigger organizations, or they might have a line or a few products that sell. So I definitely feel we need to push that market a lot more. And I think, there are brands out there that claim they're sustainable, but their products are still have leather in it. So,
Yeah, and there's so much leather, and it's really, footwear is complicated. Actually, all finished goods are complicated. I'll tell you. And before going into this space, I had no idea what went into making a handbag or a shoe. It's really to think that anywhere in the world that we can pay $19.99 for a purse or a pair of shoes is insane. So because so much work goes into it, it's so physically manual. But yeah, so the footwear industry, it's been interesting because it's just the way that shoes are made and all the different components that you might have to fit into and attached to. It's been an interesting journey, but we were very lucky. Actually, we've brought on an independent board member onto our board of directors, Noel Kinder, who was the chief sustainability officer at Nike, and now he's the chief sustainability officer at Lululemon. So he's been a great advisor as we've kind of gone through this journey. But yeah, footwear is going to be huge. It'll probably be our largest market eventually.
Yeah, and I guess if you were looking at, we spoke about the Elevate 3D, which is more based on, exotic patterns. What do you see as the next innovation for you and also the industry? And what are these emerging trends that could accelerate this transition faster?
Yeah, I think, for us, it's really just kind of evolving to different industry specs. So we're kind of just going to be laser focused for a while on skins and such, as we do get people that ask us for different types of innovations. But what I think is kind of coming in this space that's going to really be helpful across everybody in this industry is different types of innovations that can be used for coatings or different type of binding agents. Because that's where there are other innovations in the space that are more like the fruit leathers and stuff, where they're high in plastic content. And I think there's innovations out there that will help with that. Or even with ours, where we can, when on request, put on the 1% top coat. There's, right now we're using a innovation that comes from corn, but there's people out there working on algae, different types of coatings and binding agents from nature. I think that's gonna, as those evolve, because they're just not really there yet. They're still, they're either produced on small scales or they're just not quite durable enough. But I think maybe 2-3 years from now, we'll start to see some real change in that.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm really excited what you're doing with Jaguar. I hope you get many other car companies. I know you've had a lot of interest from other car companies.
Yeah.
And also it'd be great to see the announcements when you can on the luxury brands that you're working with on the fashion side, which would be great. So just want to see the products more. We'll actually have another automotive announcement coming out a couple months from now. So yeah, it's moving along fast. We're really excited about this year and next as we kind of bring all this to market. Great, perfect. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
See you next time.
Thanks, Anna.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.